Everything that we have talked about so far in our trig has been about right triangles, but we can also use some of our trig functions to do things in oblique triangles, and those are triangles that are not right. So in order to use these other things, we're going to be talking about law of sines and cosines. We need to know at least three pieces. Either we know two angles and a side, or two sides and an angle, or three sides, or two sides and an included angle. And those are all listed here on your notes for you. So if you are given two angles and a side, or two sides and the angle opposite, in those cases you're going to use law of sines. Now, if you are given the other two, either three sides or two sides and the included angle, both of those are going to be a law of cosines situation. Now, you don't have to learn this, which one you use when. In my opinion, the law of sines is easier to use, so we're going to use law of sines whenever we possibly can, and then if we encounter a situation where law of sines doesn't work, we'll switch over to law of cosines. So, like I said, you don't have to necessarily memorize which one's which. Now, something I do want to say is when we are given angle, angle, side, or angle, side, angle, these are really easy and straightforward. This one, the side, side, angle, or if you write it the other way, angle, side, side, this causes problems. It's called the ambiguous case, and we will start talking about that today, but that is going to be the primary focus of our next lesson. So, law of sines should be super familiar to you from geometry. You should have seen it there, and also from Algebra 2. So you have sine of angle A over A equals sine of angle B over B equals sine of C over C. Remember that capital letters are angles, and the side opposite is labeled with the lowercase. You don't need all of these to solve. Actually, you don't want all of them. Normally, we just use two of them, so we might use this situation if we know A and B. It just depends. I strongly encourage you to draw these things. I know it's going to seem kind of weird, but it's going to be really important when we get to the ambiguous case. So we have a triangle. We know that we have a 30-degree angle, so let me kind of sketch that. There's angle A, and the side across from it is 32. Angle B is 45. I guess we'll go with that one. So angle A was 30. Angle B is 45. That kind of looks like a 45-degree angle. And we want to find C. And we want to find side C and side B. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Well, clearly, angle C is super easy to figure out. We just add up and subtract from 180. So that's 105 degrees. Now, to find one of the other sides, this is not a right triangle, so we can't use SOHCAHTOA. So we need to use a pair that we know. We know angle A and the side across from it, so we'll start there. The sine of 30 over 32. And then whichever one we want to find next, let's say we want to find B, is going to equal the sine of 45 over B. So that's what we have to start with. That's our setup. From this point, however you want to go about this, if you want to multiply both sides by 32 or multiply both sides by B, this is a proportion, so I kind of just cross multiply. But we get B sine of 30 equals 32 sine of 45. And then on our last step, we are going to divide both sides by the sine of 30. At this point, you're just going to plug everything into your calculator. Make sure you're in degree mode today. These are all degree measurements. And we get B is 45.3. We still need to find side C. So again, we'll use the same pair that we started with. That sine of 30 over 32. And then we'll go to angle C. We don't know what angle C is. Oh, we do know what angle C is. It's 105. Sorry. It's sine of 105 over side C. Again, I'm going to cross multiply. We get C sine of 30 equals 32 sine of 105. And then we'll divide both sides by the sine of 30. And when we do that, we end up with C is 61.8. So we have successfully solved this triangle because we got all three of the missing parts. On our next problem, we want to find the height of this tree. This is only asking for one thing. It's asking for that value of h, so we don't need all of the sides, which is good news. We have this angle that we're going to pair with h, and since we know this side, we need this angle up here, so we can pair that, which is easy to find if we just add our angles and subtract from 180. Do you guys remember how to deal with 22 degrees 50 minutes? Remember, that's 22 plus 50 divided by 60. Or you could just put it in your calculator as 22 and 5/6. That way you don't have to do a rounded decimal or something. So anyway, when you add 22 and 5/6 to 96 and subtract that from 180, I think that top angle turns out to be 61 and 1/6 degrees. And so to set this up, we would say that the sine of 22 and 5/6 over h is equal to the sine of 61 and 1/6 over 30. You're going to cross multiply, you're going to divide. Just for the sake of shorter videos, I'm not going to write out all of the work. And when you do that, you should end up with h equals, how about 13.3 meters? All right, the last one of these before we kind of change topics. We want to solve this triangle. We know that angle A is 60, the side opposite is 9, and C is 10. So we don't know a lot about this triangle. So here's a 60-degree angle. Okay. Maybe it looks like this, who knows? I'm just going to call this one B and this one C. It doesn't really matter. We know that C is 10. And we need to solve the whole triangle. Okay. We can't find those other angles yet. We only know one of them, so we're going to have to go straight to law of sines. We do have this pair, that sine of 60 over 9. And then the only other piece we have is the 10, that C is 10, so we're going to have to do the sine of C over 10, like that. Okay. Again, however you want to proceed from here is fine. I think of it as a proportion and cross multiply. So I get 10 sine of 60 equals 9 sine C. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 9. So now I've got this. The sine of C equals 10/9 sine of 60. In order to solve for C, I'm going to have to take inverse sine. So you're going to put this thing in your calculator, and then whatever your calculator says, you'll do inverse sine of all of that. And that'll give us angle C. Let me get that in my calculator real quick. 74.2 degrees. And once we know angle C, super easy to find angle B because we just have to add up and subtract from 180. When we do that, we get 45.8. And then our last step is we're going to need to find side B. So again, we'll go with the pair that we know. Sine 60 over 9. And then we need to find side B. We just found out that angle B was 45.9. Sorry, 45.8 over side B. Okay, again, just for the sake of the length of the video, I won't walk you through all those steps. Cross multiply, divide. You should end up with B equals 7.45.